Can you see my screen good? Okay, yes.
It's broken. Okay, now it's good.
Cool, good to go.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Again, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Kathleen Lee with Kathleen Lee Consulting, and we will be going over two very back to basics things today, which is aesthetic and content. Ooh, I stuttered there. Aesthetic and content when it comes to your resume. So my company is focused on connecting folks like you with your careers by offering customized resumes, interview coaching, and all that other good stuff. And our mission is to help people align what you would like to do with your talents, interests, abilities, experiences, and passion. My focus is in government, hospitality, marketing and communications, and nonprofit. While I am able to do all sorts of resumes, this is my particular experience, and this is why I placed that on there. With that being said, this is a slide that I add to almost every single presentation just to give you an idea of what is out there. So on average, about 2 to 200 resumes are submitted per job posting. And on top of that, recruiters, folks that are out to hire you, spend only 10 to 15 seconds glancing at that document. So what does that mean for you and even for myself? Sometimes I'll throw my resume out there just to see how effective my current like templates and layouts are, and just to see if I'll get an interview. So the priorities, considering those numbers, would be to keep things simple, make your resume visually appealing, and make your content easy to read. So let's start with aesthetic first. Like, how would you like your resume to look? Because we live in a world that has it's almost like sensory overload when you go on social media, when you watch everything on Netflix or Hulu or whatever. Um, this is why I recommend the usage of color, and it's okay to do that now. Just make sure that the shades that you are using are still dark enough for whoever it is that's reviewing your resume to print. Because I don't print anymore, but I have seen some recruiters and some companies still do it, especially when it comes to in-person interviews. I went to an interview very recently, and like whoever was looking at my resume had it printed, and I realized, okay, I should still keep that in mind even though I don't do it. Also, use bullet points and strive to be consistent with the number of bullet points with each job description. So I recommended about 3 bullet points for each job description. I believe that's enough for you to be able to concisely let the people who are looking at your resume know what it was that you did in that particular position. And make sure that your font is big enough to read. I recommend no smaller than a size 9 font. I've seen resumes that like people try to jam as much information as they can, and so they make the font smaller. That's a little hard. Make sure that your resume is at the very basic level still readable for whoever it is that'll be reviewing it. Okay, so for online applications, it is recommended that you use sans-serif fonts, and I've given you some examples on here. Serif fonts are the ones that have the little legs or the stems at the end of the fonts, like Times New Roman and Garamond, some fonts that you may be familiar with. And they do, while they convey like the traditional type of moods, sans-serif fonts are more modern, and it conveys someone or a brand that's more approachable, and that is why that is recommended. And it's also easier to read, especially when you are turning in online applications. Okay, so I like when I first started making my own resume and doing resumes, it was just a 1 column format. But now I've seen and I have created resumes that go with a 2 column format. This is just an example, obviously. That's a serif font right there, so don't go with that. But this is more as an example for you to entertain that 2 column format, because it does squeeze in more information Sometimes like a 2-pager could turn into a 1-pager if you do it that way. That's just a suggestion. You don't necessarily have to do it if you're not comfortable with it, but again, it is something for you to think about and to possibly entertain. Okay, make sure that you have enough spacing in between the bullet points. Again, 10 to 15 seconds of glancing. If someone looks at it and it looks too crowded, they're going to be like, okay, why am I even going through this? So make sure that you have enough spacing between your bullet points and your job descriptions to make it so that your resume doesn't look too crowded. And again, so we're still on aesthetic, and that's why these are all tactical things, right? As far as labeling goes, just a reminder to label your file name, your first and last name, or your initials, just so when you send it over, it's not just like a file, a generic file titled resume that whoever is looking at it, who's probably downloading it from, wherever they're working from, doesn't have to rename it or go through the whole process. So some examples, really basic. Okay, let's go into the content. Okay, again, like I said earlier, make your content easy to read. And I added this on here because some individuals have dropped certain information that still may be vital. Obviously, your name should be on there as well as your email, but phone number is still important. Even though if you're turning in a resume online, recruiters still call you. So have that on there. And if you have a LinkedIn account, make sure you have that account on your resume. If you're able to simplify your LinkedIn link, please do so. You do have that option. It doesn't have to be the default that you get. And I recommend, again, very similar to renaming the file, first and last name. Add a summary instead of an objective to your resume. So I've seen a lot of resumes where people are just out of school, and I think that objective is great. But if you have been out in the field for a while, a summary is more recommended, only because everyone already knows what your objective is. Your goal is to get a job. That's why you're turning in your resume. Whereas a summary gives them extra information. Like, if I'm glancing at this, who is this person? Is this person versed in like a particular type of software? How long have they been in the industry? What type of soft skills are they highlighting that I'm looking for, that I have in my head when I'm screening through resumes? So add a summary instead of an objective to your resume and get straight to the point. Avoid using big words or long phrases when it comes to going over your job descriptions. Be mindful of your verb tenses. Again, this is a back to basics tip type of workshop today, and only because I've seen so much, and it's surprising to me how people kind of miss this portion. If you're still in your job, use the present tense. You lead, you organize, you distribute. And if you're talking about a job that you left like a year or two ago, go back to the previous tenses. You led, you organized, you distributed. So just wanted to throw that out there because I've been seeing it a lot. So be mindful of your verb tenses. Stay consistent with your punctuations as well. If you have, let's say, 3 bullet points, like I mentioned, and you decide to use a period for the end of it, just do the period for the rest of the bullet points and for the rest of the resume. Don't do a period in one and then none of the other. Stay consistent. I don't use periods. I see bullet points in resumes as phrases as opposed to sentences. You can do periods as long as you stay consistent. Okay, and add because people always wonder, what else can I place in here aside from my jobs? You can add your accomplishments and awards, certifications. Avoid regurgitating job descriptions. Like, it's okay to take from whatever job you did, but if you're using that same phrasing, like in your first job description, which was similar to the job before that, you're wasting space. Like, the point of a resume is to highlight as much as you can. So if you put something like, I I organized a group, and then the next sentence says something, right? I also organized a group, and the next job description says that. It's just redundant. You've got to have done more than that in those particular positions. So see if you can find creative ways to draw out other things, just so your job descriptions don't look too similar. Like, don't make them twins of each other. Switch it up a bit. Focus on your results as well, rather than your company's results. This I came up with as a tip when I was doing interview coaching. A lot of times people forget, or maybe they get too shy, or they just don't want to credit themselves. So they forget to insert their role in whatever accomplishment was that their resume is highlighting. So focus on your results, rather than or as well as your company's results, but make sure you focus on yourself, because you're the one that's on the resume. Like, you're talking about yourself. So tell them what you did that was great, that made the company better or more productive or generated more revenue. And use active and not passive words or phrases. So here's an example. Passive is something like, I was responsible for a 50% growth. Like, okay, cool. But like, what did you do as far as an action verb goes? So you can switch that up by saying you spearheaded initiatives that resulted in X amount of number over X amount of years. And these are some suggestions of action words that you can use to lead, just to kind of get your thinking juices flowing there. And just a couple of reminders here. Your resume is a quick snapshot of your experiences and your personality. It's a summary of things you've done that make you stand out, and it is a tool that'll help you get to your next career move. And this is a reminder for today. You are amazing, so let your resume reflect that about you. Okay, so we have a question here. And the question is, would you recommend sticking to 3 bullet points for job descriptions on LinkedIn too? Yes, absolutely. If you can, so LinkedIn is of course a more summarized version of your resume, but yeah, I would recommend sticking to 3 bullet points, 2 to 3 even, just because it's online and people could scroll through it. But yes, I would suggest sticking to 3 as well. So thank you, Sarah, for that question. Does anyone else have any other questions since we have time? And I breezed through this because, again, this is back to basics. I'm always a big fan of doing that, of going back to like, what are the bricks that make up our resume, right? Like, a lot of times we kind of make things a little bit more intricate for ourselves. And this is why I always say, hold on, we're talking 250 candidates, 10 to 15 seconds. Make it as attractive as possible. Okay, Ruby has a question, and Ruby, thank you for your question. Do you recommend sticking to 1 page for resumes? If you can do it, sure. But what I have observed from the multitude of resumes that I have done over the years is that if you have about 10 to 15 years of experience, combined with extracurricular activities or accolades and awards and certifications, I would recommend max 2. If you could stick it to 1, that's awesome. And it's probably easier for you too, especially if you're filling out, like we've all gone through this, where you go through an online application, you have your resume, you've simplified everything, and then it goes, hey, let's like upload your resume and also fill it out with the same exact information, which to me is such pet peeve. But if you have it in 1 page, then it's easier for you to cut and paste. But yes, I recommend sticking 1 to 2 pages, like as concise as possible. If you go over 2 pages, we're talking about something else entirely different. You're going into CV territory. And I had a presentation about a few months ago talking about the difference between a resume and a CV, which is a curriculum vitae. And that's more for education or the medical field, where it lists everything in chronological order. Whereas a resume is concise, it's more focused on whatever job it is you're applying for. It's still in chronological order, but you can do it in a way where you could list the jobs relevant to whatever you're applying for and then do other experience. So yeah, I hope that that was kind of like a long-winded answer, but 1 to 2 pages for resumes. Thank you for that question. Cover letters. So we have a question. When will cover letters be necessary? I Okay, so when I do resumes, it's part of my package to include a template that is tailored to whatever industry that individual is applying for, as well as whatever skills they've told me. Because that's what I put in the cover letters. Is it necessary? No, but I recommend it. What I've seen is 90% of the online applications that I have screened through request for it. It's supplemental information. If we're talking about necessary as optional, then yes, you don't have to have it, but why not? If there is an opportunity for you to tell people more about you outside of your resume, go for it. Add it in your cover letter. Let's say you like fundraise and you just had it as an extracurricular activity on your resume. So for your cover letter, you can drop that in there. By the way, I spearheaded this for free because I was a volunteer and I raised X million dollars. So that's kind of important and it's significant. It's just an example of how you can use your cover letter to incorporate things that may not have been mentioned in your resume. Okay, how do you address the gaps in your resume? That's a great question. I've seen a lot of discussions, especially on LinkedIn, talking about gaps, especially with COVID, right? So let's say you got let go or laid off at the beginning of COVID and you're looking for a job now. We're talking about like a 2 year gap, right? But we're living in an age where that's more acceptable than how it was 10 to 15 years ago. And nowadays recruiters are more considerate of what exactly it was you were doing during that gap. Were you taking care of your family? Were you like a stay-at-home parent? Were you doing extracurricular activities? You can like add that. Well, do it in a way where when you do your resume, you lay out the actual jobs you did, chronological order, obviously. And then as far as the gaps go, if that comes up in your interview, you can go ahead and talk about it. And I think that kind of segues into the next question. If you've been laid off, how do you address that in your resume, especially if the layoff was not due to the pandemic? If you're like me, I consider myself old at some point, right? Especially if you work in different places. Like I'm originally from the Silicon Valley and I was affected by that whole bust. So at some point, if you've been working within the last 10 to 15 years, you would have experienced a layoff by then. You don't have to write that on your resume. Just again, write your resume in a way that objectively addresses the jobs that you had. And then when they ask you in the interview, hey, like what was this gap? You can let them know, oh, I was there was like a company-wide layoff, and this is where the gap was. You don't have to like delve into it, but you just have to be matter of fact about it, especially if it wasn't due to that pandemic or if it wasn't your fault. Okay. Should you tailor your resume depending on the role you are applying for, especially for experienced professionals? If you can, yes. Again, this is because the process of recruiters looking through resumes is always expedited. I've been on both ends. I have been an interviewer and I've been an interviewee. Sometimes I've looked at a resume and gone, okay, yeah, this is too long. And I know I'm not the only one that does that, sadly, right? So if you can, like I mentioned earlier, have in your summary some keywords that you may have picked up from whatever they were looking for, match those keywords with what you actually have experience in, what you know you can do. drop that in your summary. So someone who is glancing at it can be like, oh, this person is versed in A, B, and C in these particular systems. So if you can tailor it to that particular role in industry, right? If you have a lot of time, absolutely. Job hunting is a job in itself. So if you can do it for that particular role, awesome. If you're looking within the same industry, try to tailor it to that industry. So, like, your resume is going to be similar to the other, I guess, positions that you're applying for anyway. Okay, let me go back to the questions here. Would you consider it a red flag if a recruiter asks why you have not been working through the pandemic? I think it depends. Like, are you, if you're talking about, is it a red flag for the recruiter? I almost feel like that might be a violation of um, certain employment laws. But let me get back to that. I think that's a great question. But if a recruiter asks why you haven't been working, uh, I think they may just be trying to figure out, okay, there's been this global thing that happened. So what have you been doing with your time, right? Like, think of it. This is how I see or perceive a lot of things, right? Because I have my business, I that's how I think. Like, if I were hiring someone, I personally wouldn't ask this question. But if you get this question, try to put yourself in their shoes. Why are they asking this? And a lot of times it's likely because they're thinking, okay, how have you made yourself productive? Because if you're going to work with me as my colleague, like how are we going to work together? Like how have you fared with the resources that you've been given? So I hope that answers that. If not, we can you can always email me and we can go through that conversation further. Okay, Ruby, thank you for this question. Is it important to include extracurricular activities on the resume if there isn't enough room with past work experience? Okay, are you talking about, hold on, let me try to parse out this question. Okay, if you're talking about you have a whole bunch of experiences, and I think this might be a question of prioritization. Um, if you would like to include both, which I recommend, especially if the extracurricular activities you feel may be helpful to let them know that you have a diverse set of skills, put both of them. As far as the extracurricular activities go, what I've done to fit everything is just do the titles for it. I prioritize like detailing out job descriptions for the actual positions that you were paid for. So you can do that. And then extracurricular activities, if you could squeeze in like their titles, go for it. If you feel like they may not be relevant to whatever you're applying for, you can take it out. But again, this is all subjective depending on the job. But I would, if you can put both, just so it showcases you as a well-rounded person, go for it. And this is what I do, right? Like, my job is to see what you are bringing and how I can fit that in a way that makes it so whoever's looking at it can go, wow, you did X, Y, and Z jobs and you did all this, awesome. So if there's a way to put both while minimizing just the extracurricular activities and their just descriptions, go for it. But if you feel like it's not relevant to the job, take it out. So, would you advise adding vaccination status to a resume? Nolski, what a great question. Not, I wouldn't currently. Just focus on your job descriptions and whatever else you want to highlight. What I've noticed is that some online forums actually have that question as part of their questionnaire. Have you been vaccinated? And there are some companies, a lot of companies obviously have been mandated to require vaccination status, but you don't have to put that on there unless the company asks you. But I think that's an excellent question. I don't know if as a society we're going to go down that way, but I have been seeing it in online applications. So let the company ask you. Like, don't volunteer that information if one, you're not comfortable with it, and two, if they haven't asked for it. So just leave it to, hey, this is the job that I'm applying for. This is what I'm good at. Here you go. They ask for the status, then you just let them know. But I definitely appreciate that question because I feel like that's a whole nother discussion, right? Like what does that open up for all of us? I mean, does that, it's kind of like asking people whether or not they have disabilities or certain qualities. Like that's a whole nother discussion. And I appreciate you asking it because I feel like that could definitely be expanded on. So thank you, Nolski. Appreciate it. Okay. So how do you go, thank you, Fatman, how do you go about with changing industries with your resume, especially when your past experience is not completely related to the next job you are applying for? Great question. So um, I insert this in here because this is what I'm here for, right? Part of what I do is making sure that whatever you have as far as your experience goes can be relevant to whatever it is that you are applying for. So on my end, I have done resumes for people who have switched from the hospitality industry to the medical industry, or security, law enforcement to medical industry. It's really interesting, right? So the way you go about it is you figure out what qualities are similar to what your experiences are and what qualities whatever it is that you're applying for is looking for. Like for instance, there are some jobs that require people to be detail oriented, that require them to like know certain software. So you can just kind of connect the dots. This whole thing is it's fun for me. I know that sounds really nerdy, but it's really fun for me to connect the dots and be like, okay, let's say you are I don't know, you're a civil engineer and you want to go into tech. Like, how do we kind of put that together? And of course, we also have to be realistic about what jobs are available to you based on your skills. But like the first step is for you to figure out what I know and what this job that I'm going for is looking for and what the things I have in common with them are, and then highlight that. So if you need help doing that with your resume, I'm here. So thank you for that question. How long should the summary be? Is one sentence okay? I would recommend 2 to 3 sentences. Mine is actually just bullet points, but for everyone else, I do 2 to 3 sentences. And usually the content is something like professional experience in whatever sectors, right? Versed in whatever skills or software, especially if you see something pop up in a job description and they're like, oh, we need someone that can do this, add that in the summary. So that's one of the first things that they see about your resume. So I would recommend 1 to 3, just to kind of like an objective, right? Although objective is usually something like aiming to look for, to be in a position where I can apply my skills. We all have that. This is why I say just be done with the objective. We get it. You want a job that really uses what you know, what you have, and could be something that you love. But a summary is, this is what I have, this is what I offer. So 1 to 3 sentences. Okay. Should you include certifications that are not directly relevant to work experience? It depends on the job that you're applying for. What I've noticed is that there are particular sectors that look more into soft skills and diverse experiences, like business development or anything with marketing and all that. I prefer adding the certifications because it shows that when you had enough patience to take on something and complete it. Like for the most part, certifications are it takes some work to do it. Some may be easy to get, right? You can just go online, get a bunch of certifications. Some, like a certified uh, diving instructor, that's challenging. You have to go underwater for hold your breath for X amount of hours. Like I used to, and I still do it. Like I'll put like marathon runner on there because it starts conversation with the interviewer. Like, what if they're also someone that is into diving? They'll be like, oh, that's cool, you have a certification. So I think it makes for good conversation, interview icebreakers if you can add it in there. And it, even though it's not directly relevant to the work experience, go for it, especially if you have space. Why not, right? I mean, for the most part, like, I like to tell people, we just kind of look for individuals that we want to work with. If someone had that, I'd be like, this person's so diverse and they're probably open to new things, so add it in there. Should I describe my roles in the past or present tense? Yeah, okay. So this is part of the presentation. If you are now, like, let's say you're a graphic designer, that is the present tense. That's what you are. By present tense, I mean, like, you know, organize or lead. But like, and I've seen this. I'd rather have you do that than put something like organizing or leading. Just don't do the ing. Just do what you're currently doing. So present tense, if you are in your particular position currently. Past tense, if it's no longer your job. Should I list my references in my resume? No. And I've said this before too. You know how some folks put references available upon request? You're wasting a line, right? I mean, we've, like, through this discussion with you folks, through the questions, um, it's been, how do I put everything in? How do I put all these experiences in, whether it's five, whether I'm out of college or 5 or 10 years? A line like references available upon request, like that takes up this line, that valuable line that could be used to highlight whatever job descriptions. But I do recommend, and I give this as well as part of like my package when someone goes and goes to me for the resume, is have a references list. It's a separate page, and it's kind of, the design to it is similar to your resume and your cover letter, but hold on to it. And then when they ask for it, you can easily just pull it and be like, here you go. But don't present that information unless it's requested. I've only seen it. I'm throwing numbers as far as like the number of things that I have seen. I like maybe 10 to 20% are actually like, okay, here are like, who are your references, but hold on to it on a separate page, but don't list it on the resume. Should the summary be tailored as well? It should be tailored to you, to what you can do. And I mentioned this earlier, right? If you see a particular like system or detail in the job description that they're looking for, add it in the summary. Like, yeah, I'm good at that. Like, I am versed in whatever it is that they're looking for. So pop that in there. Okay. Resume parsing. I have two resumes. One is a single page, the other is a CV. Okay, so I'm not sure what the question is on this one. Let me switch tabs over here. Oh, okay. Well, let me try to. Sorry, Phil. I'm unsure what your question is, but I'm just going to answer it based on the text that I'm reading. Okay. Again, CV is curriculum vitae is more for particular fields, education. You know, if you want to be a professor, they'll usually ask for a curriculum vitae. If you're like a pharmacist or a doctor or in the medical field, they'll ask for that. That's what a CV is for. And a resume is the shorter version, like you said. That's the one, like you mentioned, is formatting for humans to read. I get what you're saying, because CVs are like detailed. They have citations, right? They have publications. I get it. Depends on your search. Again, different fields, right? So
Kat, so
yeah.
he followed it up with a question. So he's asking any tips on how to make a resume more parser friendly. Is in the chat, like right at the bottom. So for those who are out there, please leave it in Q&A because it's hard for us to get through everything that's in chat. So we don't want to
Yeah,
lose the
we
question.
are going back and forth. But I say if you have a single page formatting, go with that. And as long as you feel like it accurately reflects and summarizes your experience. I'm not sure if that answers that. But if not, we can talk like later on the side, so I can go over that more with you. Okay. The action words, sure. Hold on, okay. These are just some suggestions. Hopefully that helps. Should you include relevant courses you've taken on Coursera or Udemy? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they kind of almost fall under, um, education, certifications, all that, especially if, like, as long as you have a job description, like not a job description, I'm sorry, like a description to what those classes are. I mean, you can like rattle them off, but if someone, one, if you're saving space and someone just glances at it, they'll be like, what are these Udemy classes? But if you can kind of do a little summary of what those classes are, or if the class titles actually reflect on what the classes are and they're relevant to what you are applying for, especially in the tech industry, yeah, you can put it in the like the education section, or you can do it in a way that highlights that you've taken the extra step to be like to educate yourself. So yeah. If a recruiter is asking for 8 years in a technology that's only been around for 4, how would you go about graciously correcting their misconceptions? I think that's a great question. And this reminds me of a cover letter that I recently had to redo and almost redact for someone, where this is a cover letter and they were applying for a position and they were going over a couple of things that they felt that the company could do better. So, normal human interaction, right? Like, if you are making friends with people, yeah, back to basics. If you're making friends with people, you don't go, hey, yeah, you're cool, but the way you introduced yourself to me was really odd. Like the way you did your sentence, it's not may I, it's not can I, it's may I. Like, those are little things. Like, I think mostly your question is very um I think it kind of, I get what you're talking about, but it's almost like unnecessary to point that out. Maybe you can down the line when you're hired, right? But what you're trying to do if you're trying to get to the door is be like, okay, well, like, this is what I can do. Like, and we don't even run into this. I think this is actually a pretty good question, because you're right. In tech, it's different. Like, what if something did just come up and they're looking for 8 years of experience? Like, you could probably add that in the cover letter, but do it in a way that's not snarky, if that makes sense. Just be like, let's say there's a program, you can be like, I have, worked on this since its inception in 2015. There's one way to do it. Like, do it in a way where you're presenting yourself that's not like as knowledgeable, but not in a way where you're like correcting them, almost making them feel like, okay, that was kind of stupid for you to point that out. So yeah, um, if you can do that, that'd be cool. What are your thoughts on spending the time and effort? I feel like we've answered this um, multiple times, but let's go over it. Thoughts on spending the time and effort to match up the specific terms in your resume to the job description, and also using resume-based optimization services. I mean, if you feel like that increases your odds, go for it. Like, I do that. I actually match the job description, but not take it word for word. The job description with whatever the skill set of whoever I'm working with is. So yeah, algorithm-based resume optimization services. We're leaning towards that direction, I think, right? But for now, as much as possible, if you can customize things, if you can tailor it to what they're looking for, just go with that. Very back to basics. Hope that answered that. For the cover letter, even if it is not explicitly asked for, would it be good to practice to include one as part of the resume file? Good question, Kurt. Yes. So, this is what I've done for myself, for my clients: resume, cover letter, references, 3 different documents. And the resume obviously is a more significant one because that's what it asks for. That's what you draw from when it comes to sending it over via email, via online application. But yeah, like, and the cover letter too, if you have a template, which I also create, it, like I mentioned, it gives you an opportunity to further expand on the job descriptions that you may have had limited space for, or you couldn't like talk more about. So yeah, I think it's a great practice. So thank you for answering that question. Okay. Do you have any other questions? These are great. I think it's wonderful that you guys are coming forward with these questions. It makes me learn too. Like Nolski, your question about the technology existing later than the qualifications, I think that's actually, you know, in retrospect, a great question. But it also goes back to how sometimes people feel, maybe 2 different subjects, but sometimes people feel like just because a job description says 10 years and you only have 5, that you're not qualified for it. You should just do it anyway. You know, just turn it in if you know that you have the skills for it and if you have the experience that could make you successful in that particular sector or that particular position.
Thanks, Kat.
Of
A
course.
question for you though. You know, LinkedIn has increasingly become really important as well, and it's kind of a reflection of, you know, your achievements and so on. How much time do you think our candidates should be putting into their LinkedIn profile?
Similar to, I mean, it's your LinkedIn profile is just a way to highlight your resume online. So, and you're consistently updating it as well. As much as far as time goes, when it comes to um, like coming up with a content for it, spend the same amount of time that you would on a resume. So, initially, before the back and forth, I've done about like I estimate like 3 to 4 or 5 hours just to kind of do one resume, right? And that's why this is a tedious process, and it may be easier if you already have an existing resume to transfer that over to your LinkedIn. And as far as time goes, like at that point, it's just maintenance and figuring out like what jobs are available through LinkedIn. So yeah, I'd say it's if you want to be consistent about it, you know, you can check it like maybe once or twice a week. Some people do it daily. It's up to where you are in your search process. But as far as content goes, yeah, spend as much time on it as you would on like your actual resume. I see a question. Okay, easiest way to get work experience. Ooh, this is a good one. This is kind of long, so we thank you for your question. I've been most often been advised that the easiest way out of the loop of, quote, you need work experience to get work experience, end quote, is to simply lie to recruiters about work history and other pending offers, a, quote, fake it till you make it, end quote, approach. While this has worked for many colleagues of mine, I'd rather not compromise my moral fiber just to get into this field. Do you have any advice on how to escape the loop? Anonymous, thank you for that question. Like I probably more aligned with your school of thought. Like I'm not a big fan of fake it till you make it. I think the last I heard of that was when I was taking martial arts when I was little. Like, okay, cool. Fake it till you make it. And it works for some, but if it doesn't resonate with you, and not to be too hokey about it, if it doesn't resonate with your soul, don't do it. Then you'll just feel really horrible about yourself. So as far as like work experience goes, this is what I had mentioned as far as extracurricular activities go. So, you know, add things that you've been doing outside of work. Volunteer experience also helps. You could add that on there. That's an extracurricular activity. That's you giving your time to particular organizations, mostly nonprofit, maybe, right? Because you're volunteering, using your skills or whatever you can give. So that shows your philanthropic side. It also shows that you are industrious in a way where even if you're not getting paid, you're giving back. So you can add that on there. As far as like looking for work, networking is also, I just read this article about how networking is, some people are really iffy about it, but networking also helps as far as getting positions go. So there are ways to go about it. So volunteer your time, add your extracurricular activities. And just to reiterate, if you feel bad about lying, don't do it. Because if you lied about something, it's probably going to show down the line anyway, you know? So stick to your guns. If you feel like you have to do that to get into a particular company, it's probably not the right one for you. This is kind of like a reverse example. So I do a bunch of extracurricular activities, and this I had worked for a particular firm that was like, you should not be doing A, B, C, and all these things because it is a conflict of interest when it comes to what we do. And it took me a whole year to realize, and I hope you guys don't have to go through this. It took me a whole year to realize that that was not the right company for me. And this is why I now work to help people find the jobs that are fit for them. So, to summarize, if you don't like lying, don't lie. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think another way you could approach it, it depends. Again, I think it depends on the type of role. If it's, I can't speak to engineering focused roles because my background was more in business. But of course, if you don't have, for example, any experience in product sales, but you want to go into product sales, maybe what you could do is, of course, the first thing you do is to make sure you get the interview, but you could use them as that as an opportunity to show how you can problem solve based on a case that you can find. So more like a case study and say, hey, I've never been in this field, but if this was something I had to solve, I would do it this way. Just to show that, you have a logical approach to, addressing a problem within that field that you want to get into. So that might be one way to go about it. And it probably works for people looking for more business or tech adjacent roles. But of course, for engineering, I'm not sure if that's so easy. So, you might have to kind of think through that strategy. But I think showcasing how you can solve a problem, even though you've never done it before, might be a way to get the recruiters to be more interested in you, or at least bump you up to, potential candidate level, if that makes sense. Okay, so we have 8 more minutes. We can either keep Kathleen here with more questions if you guys have them, or if not, we can end this session. But I want to remind everyone who's listening in to update your profile on Brazen, put in your resumes, and if you want your one-on-ones with Kathleen on the day off for that 15-minute review, email me so that we can email me and secure your spot because it's going to run out. Any other questions? No? Okay, it's kind of quiet.
Oh yeah, Ellen, what's for lunch? I'm kidding. That is a question. But I do hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and we hope to see all of you back on the 4th.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your time today.
Sure.
All right. Okay, again, it's been recorded, so I'll send the link out to everyone very soon.